Well, thank you all for coming, first of all. My name is Michael Tiger. I'm a member of the Hartford Brainard Airport Association who's sponsoring this press conference. We are on Zoom with several attendees. Several, actually. And we're recording for distribution on YouTube in the future, but we thank you all for being here. I have a lot of prepared remarks that I'd like to read through since the recording and Zoom people don't have this paper. And then I'll open up to questions. But let's get started. We want to thank everybody for coming here to the first Hartford Brainard Airport Association press conference. We hope it'll be informative, and our discussion will raise important questions regarding the future of Hartford Brainard Airport. We have several handouts that we've given the people who are here, and they'll be available online for anyone on request. We have the City of Hartford resolution, the SMART Committee resolution. We have a PowerPoint presentation about the airport in our interests. We have the Hartford Brainard Airport Association newsletter, which just came out in print last week. And we also have available a 95-page report on the use of Hartford Brainard Airport site, which was sponsored by the Connecticut General Assembly in 2017. A little bit about who the Hartford Brainard Airport Association is. We are a grassroots movement that was founded in January of 2022 in response to our significant concerns that political forces in the city of Hartford and the state of Connecticut are moving rapidly to close Brainard Airport. We are formally organized with a 7-person executive board. We have registered as a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, and our sole purpose is to promote the benefits of general aviation and save Brainard Airport from closure. We have no political aspirations. We have legal counsel with the law firm of Brown, Panderas, and Scott, and we support and represent the interests and concerns of over 100 pilots, business owners, and supporters of the airport and general aviation, including several corporations and flight training facilities that require Brainard's survival to continue to supply pilots and aircraft technicians to fill a huge national deficit of trained aviation personnel. After all, where do you think airline pilots come from except our training facilities here? Hartford Brainard has been in existence for 101 years. It's a registered historical site with the state of Connecticut and has supported the community for years in many ways, many significant ways. We believe that it provides a strong economic benefit, and we have the statistics to prove it, and the benefits of keeping Brainard open far outweigh the plans to close the airport and use the site for other purposes. Our airfield is not, and we repeat, is not just a playground for folks with airplanes. To the contrary, it's an unknown and poorly understood jewel existing right in the center of our region that supports all the general aviation has to offer, and we'll talk about more below. Our agenda today, we first became aware of the strong and concerted effort to close the airport by learning of the resolution put forth by the Hartford City Council to draft a resolution to close the airport. Digging further, it became clear that there was a strong movement also in the Connecticut State Senate in the same direction. I want to make it clear that digging into all the peaks and valleys of the saga has not been easy. We've come to learn that there are solid facts, but there are also rumors and speculations and incomplete information that cloud our efforts to get to the truth. What has been very clear to us is that whatever has been in the works, the plans for closure have been highly secretive and very little or even non-existent, with very little and non-existent public oversight. We consider that very distressing and not a political movement made in the public interest. It's our intention today to discuss what we feel are those important movements that are afoot so that you of the press can make the true facts and information available to the public. We feel very strongly that the citizens of Greater Hartford have a right to know in detail just what is happening to this important facility. We also wish to clearly understand exactly what would replace Brainard if it were to close. It is our position that the benefits of an airport unquestionably outweigh any other alternative, whatever that might be. And then I'd like to conclude my remarks by saying something about the benefits that we know Hartford Brainard has to offer our community, and then discuss our hopes that Brainard can be grown to be a greater benefit in order to serve our city and the greater Hartford region. The basis of our concerns are the following. As I mentioned, our concern began with learning of the resolution that was passed by the Hartford City Council in October of 2021. We have a copy of that resolution here. The resolution was introduced by Council Member James Sanchez, who was also employed by the MDC, to create a 15-person panel to identify the path that would be most expedient to close the airport and replace it with another entity that they felt would better serve the city. This city recommendation would be later submitted to the state legislature for consideration in committee, with the expectation that there would be ultimately a state legislative vote on whether or not to close Brainard. While the Connecticut Airport Authority technically owns and manages the property as a quasi-state agency, they can be directed by the state legislature to begin closure proceedings if a favorable vote passes. What we can share with you is some facts in this situation. First, this is not the first time that efforts have been made to close the airport. As early as 2004, the Metropolitan District Commission, the MDC, created a proposal to expand their property for waste management, and they also suggested building a power plant at the end of one of our runways. That proposal was easily overturned. However, in 2015, State Senator John Fonfara asked to create a legislative program review and investigations committee to identify the best use for this 201-acre property, and we have the handout of that 95-page report. This was very thoroughly and professionally researched 95-page report, and it came to the overwhelming conclusion that the best use of this South Meadow property was to keep it just as it is, a general aviation airport. But despite this report, which seems to have been buried and forgotten, efforts still have arisen to again close the airport. One state senator is quoted as saying that the property can be used for luxury high-rise condominiums and upscale shopping in a marina. This claim is far from reasonable, considering that few would support this type of building between a contaminated trash-to-energy plant on one side that is closed and needs significant remediation, and a waste treatment plant on the other side. We are certain that there is another agenda underlying this movement, and we believe that it is not necessarily for public betterment. But this press conference was not called to speculate about rumor or insinuate negatively against any politician or political action. We believe that the truth about whatever movement is underfoot to close Brainard will become public soon enough. What we wish to do today is to make very clear to the general public that an airport such as Brainard offers considerable benefits to the region in a great many ways. The Connecticut Airport Association and the FAA support the continued existence of Brainard. The public should know both sides of the argument before any legislative movement closes our airport for good. I'd just like to mention a couple of economic benefits that we know Brainard gives to the region, which are totally unknown to the general public. In 2000 alone, Brainard offered 426 jobs, $54.8 million of total output, $3.36 million of state taxes, and $17.1 million of labor income. And these are statistics specifically from the CAA website that exists online today. Brainard Airport has had 56,728 operations in 2020 alone, which makes it the third busiest airport in the state. That's a lot of action that's going on in this airport. It also has the fourth most based airports of all of Connecticut. I have a list in my handout of the current operations of what's going on at Brainard now, which I'll read quickly. We offer employment We have 3 active flight schools on the field for training of private pilots and also the ones that go to the airlines. The state police has its headquarters here. Homeland Security is here. Lifestar flies frequently as air ambulance services. We have aviation businesses on the field, including VIP Avionics, Total Aircraft, which does airplane overhaul and repair. We have fuel sales, and we have charter flights that go out daily. We have aviation medical services with Dr. Dodenhoff, who's a senior FAA aviation medical examiner who has active practice here on the field. NetJets frequently flies in here for charter flights. The Greater Hartford Open has its base here, and I'm sure everyone has seen the blimp that lands in our grass strip here, and they support the Greater Hartford Open every summer. Connecticut Aerotech is a technology school at the end of our runway here that has a very busy school sponsored by the state that trains aviation mechanics for fulfilling jobs that are highly in need in the region and also in the country. And we have an air traffic control tower to manage aircraft activity as well as managing the upcoming increased drone activity, which is coming to an airport near you. That's Brainard. What we'd like to see is the airport to grow rather than go away, and future operations would include increased job creation to meet the need of the Hartford business community, like insurance, the manufacturing and medical community. Many insurance companies have flight departments that fly in and out of Brainard either with helicopter or small personal jets on a frequent basis, and they have let us know very clearly that if the airport closes, they would struggle to figure out why would they stay in Hartford. Not the only reason, but an important factor. There is increasing drone activity in the future, and Aquiline Drone Medical is a company that is Hartford-based that has 400 employees at the present time, and they are increasing drone activity in the area as we speak. With increased drone activity, we'll need more air traffic control. We have a control tower at the field right now, and taking that away would cause significant overload for Bradley Airport's air traffic control system. This airport is a historical landmark that's identified on the Connecticut Historical Registry, and in this room alone you can see all the memorabilia that really defines all the history that goes on with Brainard, including landings by Charles Lindbergh and Amelia Earhart. It really is a gem and can be considered a museum. We support our aerospace industry with cargo shipping. We'd like to see tourism and more air taxi services available. More pilot training would be definitely important to support the community, including technical education at Connecticut Aero. We've had a restaurant on the field. News and traffic used to fly out of here, but things such like aerial mapping and surveilling, business and vacation travel, search and rescue are all activities that go along with the general aviation airport capability. We also think that this airport would afford inner-city youth an opportunity to explore aviation careers, and to that end, the doors are always open to bring in young people to show them what aviation's about. And we have things such as air shows that occur in the summer. And it's also a place of public interest. It's just fun to watch airplanes fly, and people come down and park in the airport just to see airplanes take off and land. I'd like to just close with one example that we think is emblematic of services to the community which would be lost if Brainard closed. I mentioned to you about the drone activity. Hartford Hospital has a very busy transplant system with hearts and kidneys and livers that they do on a regular basis. The New England Organ Bank organizes organ transplants for the region, and it would not be unreasonable for an air transport of an organ from wherever, from the Caribbean, from Canada, from parts in the country, to fly into Brainard directly by corporate jet. And then, excitingly, the donor organ can be picked up by a drone and transported by drone directly over to Hartford Hospital to a waiting transplant team. I think that would be a very exciting opportunity, and that would be the first in the country. The Aquiline company is ready to go with something like that. And I talked to the New England Organ Bank, which is located in Newton, Mass., and they said they could see 2 to 3 organs a month being transported here for transplant. And those are huge numbers. So closing the airport would eliminate an opportunity like that. Those are all the remarks I have to make. I have Barbara Rowley is here. She is one of the co-owners of VIP Avionics, and maybe she can give a couple of comments about what they have to offer on the field. She's an important business leader. Barbara?
Thank you. Barbara Rowley is my name, and co-owner of VIP Avionics, VIP Aircraft Maintenance, and VIP Instruments. We are really the only business that offers avionics, aircraft maintenance, and instrument repair in New England. Believe it or not, this business has been on this airport for over 40 years. My father-in-law actually started the business. We sell and install and service anything someone sees in the cockpit of an aircraft, and obviously perform aircraft maintenance. We are very fortunate that we've got extremely skilled and long-standing employees. Their average employment here at this airport has been over 18 years. And I don't know that you've mentioned, but also the fact that the airport is close to the city of Hartford's convention center has certainly allowed a lot of convention attendees to be located very close to the convention center. We sell and service to customers in all 50 states of the United States. Our fly-in business, we bring aircraft in from all over New England and the mid-Atlantic states. Probably over 15% of our business comes from New York, another 15% from Massachusetts, over 10% from Rhode Island. And these customers come in and they support the local businesses in and around Hartford for sure. We also service the state police aircraft, Lifestar helicopters, and the Civil Air Patrol, not only the Connecticut Civil Air Patrol, but New York's, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, who bring their planes to us for service. Brainard Airport provides a convenient and appropriate location and size to accomplish hundreds, literally hundreds of FAA mandated inspections every year to general aircraft owners, private aircraft owners, but again, as I said, to the state police, Civil Air Patrol, Lifestar, Angel Flight, Command Aerospace, and Pratt & Whitney. And we feel very fortunate to be located here at this airport. It's very, very well located, and we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. One other thing, I wanted to bring in one of the flight school instructors, or the owner of one of the flight schools, but they were unavailable because they're out teaching right now. I do want to mention that we have 3 active flight training programs here on the field. I don't have the exact numbers, but they train hundreds of pilots. Many are private pilots who just do for recreation, but it is very common for pilots to get their pilot certificate, become flight instructors, put their hours in at Brainard, and then go on to the majors as airline pilots. Most people don't know how pilots are trained, but it is, without a question, it can be a grassroots beginning where they learn how to fly at a local airport and then go on to fly major aircraft. So every time you are taking a vacation trip to Florida or out to California, you need to realize that those pilots are trained sometimes right on the field like Brainard. Eliminating 3 flight schools would be tragic, and as you may or may not know, there is a huge pilot shortage in the United States right now that needs to be attended to, and we are doing our part here. The other comment I'd make is that at the end of the runway we do have, and I mentioned, a very important Connecticut Aero Technical School which trains our technicians who do aircraft, airframe, and power plant management to go out into the community, and that is also a highly underserved industry. And Brainerd does its part to supply those people as well. So we're proud of what we do. We think we are very unrecognized as an airport for all the benefits that we have to offer. And the reason for this news conference today is to get that word out, along with answer any questions you might have. And I'll be happy to take them now. We also have several people on Zoom who are welcome to join in.
According to Wikipedia, Jennifer Rodriguez, an American actress, producer, and singer.
Are there any questions from the folks here?
Yeah, I guess I would just have to ask, you said you weren't trying to draw any, or I guess launch any accusation against any politician or political entity. But in your remarks, you prominently mentioned the NBC, what they wanted to do here some 16 years ago. And you also mentioned Councilman Sanchez being an NBC employee. It seems like you may be trying to draw some conclusion there. Is that the case?
Not necessarily, Ken. I'm trying to state facts, and the facts are pretty obvious. I'm not making any implications. I don't think that's our job here. But the facts are correct that this movement seems to have started at the Hartford City Council. We know that Mr. Sanchez introduced the resolution, and that's a matter of public record. And we do notice that he is employed by the MDC. The conclusions from that need to be drawn by people other than me at this press conference today. But we're curious, and what we do know clearly is that we don't know what agenda they have to use to replace this airfield. Everybody says they want to close the airfield, but we don't know what they want to replace it with, and that's a bothersome issue. We do know that there has been talk about making it a condo place and where the public can come down, but we know that that won't be possible for a number of reasons. If that's the case, why don't we know what will be used to replace this, and why are our politicians pushing so hard to close the airport? That's an unknown that we don't know the answer to.
Has the panel been officially created yet? Is that actively being talked about?
Which panel is that, please?
The panel that Sanchez had created at the City Council.
In October, they created a 15-member panel who are none of whom are pilots or representatives of Brainerd, all of whom are given the directive to come up with a report that, number one, defines why Brainerd should not continue to exist, and then come up with a plan for an alternative to Brainerd.
Has that plan come out?
No, they had 90 days. The dates to me are confusing. The resolution was drafted in October. There was 90 days with which to complete that directive. When that starts, when the clock starts, I don't know, but it could be from October 90 days forward, which would be around February, which is when the State Senate reconvenes.
And then, if I may, another question. The association has hundreds of people inside of it with, ties to the airport. Can you just talk about, in a more anecdotal way, how people feel about the loss of this airport?
The people who I'm mentioning who use this airport are active pilots, they are hangar owners, they are aircraft owners, they are businesses, they have direct connections to the airport. If you're involved in aviation, it becomes a passion. There are many people who just do it for enjoyment, but there are many people who are the hangar owners and aircraft owners who own businesses. We could bring in a good handful of people who have business interests that would be jeopardized by closing the airport. Because if the airport closed, we don't have another plan B of where we put our airplanes. We can't go up to Bradley, we can't go down to Meriden, Robertson is too small. This is an important location for general aviation, which is not United or Delta or the big guys, but they're the corporate pilots that fly in and out, the general aviation pilots, the twin engine aircraft that, like Cape Air, that go back and forth to the islands. That's what this general aviation airport is good for. And by taking it away, you lose all that activity. Barbara, who runs VIP Avionics, would be out of business because there's no place for her to go where airplanes can come back in. Total Aircraft is a very busy operation here which does aircraft maintenance and management there's no place to go. They'd have to close. So closing this airport would jeopardize a really large number of operations that are active now. So I think the passion is extremely high against closing.
Excuse me, you haven't discussed the environmental problems here. I happen to be chairman of flood control, and we've had many times different problems with the dike, and a lot of those are related to the underlying muck below this whole thing. And why that I think is a major factor that you should be discussing.
We know that the airport is a contaminated space. That's well known for years. And we have control of that space environmentally by having asphalt in runways that are not breached. If you take that factor and you start to build and breach into that contaminated area, the environmental impacts are huge. I can't say this is a Superfund site, but we have a trash to energy plant that has been running for years and contaminates the area. We have waste treatment on the other side. So keeping Brainard the way it is makes all that issue a safe factor. We don't want to, I can't imagine doing building and bringing up high rises and shopping down here. Who would want to come down here?
Well, first of all, it's not legal to build on public, you can't build housing on this contamination without eliminating 70 feet worth of contamination.
Of course.
All the way down to bedrock. So why that's even a factor, I can't imagine.
So getting back to Ken's question about what's going on here, we don't know what's going on. And we'd like transparency to find out if they want to close Brainard, what do they have instead? If it's not going to be building condos and shopping centers, the public has a right to know what are the plans instead. And what has been clear to us in digging and investigating is we don't know what those plans are. And I think transparency and try and find out what they are is important. That's not my job today to discuss the implications, but I hope that the press digs into that because they're important issues.
Dr. Tiger, excuse me, has your group learned anything more about the recreation destination that's talked about by Senator Funfar or Mr. Sanchez in this brochure? They seem to have a vision and it seems to be very clearly laid out, and I was just wondering, have you learned anything more?
I can tell you this, and this relates to fact as well. The 2017 report that came out, sponsored by the Connecticut State Senate, about what would be the best use for this airport, clearly defined that keeping the airport open is the best use for this 201-acre property. In 2018, the city of Hartford put out a request for proposals, again, trying to define what can we do for this airport to make it, to do something instead of making it an airport. There were no responses. Or if there were responses, they aren't public, so we have no idea what alternatives are available, and the CAA doesn't have any idea what's going on as far as alternatives, so we are quite in the dark. If you want to close an airport, what's the motivation to do that, and what do you plan to do as an alternative? That's an unknown to us. We are concerned about that. The public should be concerned about that, and there's no transparency. If they plan to do something else, I think we should be hearing about it. So there have been a document that's very valid that was published in 2016 by the State Senate Investigative Committee, request for proposal in 2018, we still know nothing. And yet the move to close Brainard now is very strong, very active. We find that very curious and distressing.
Have the Corps of Engineers been contacted? Corps of Engineers are very strict about anything that touches the dike, goes anywhere near the dike. So far they haven't been part of this discussion.
There'd be no reason to bring them in if there are no proposals on the table to investigate. Right now, Brainard's untouched, and we're using it as an airport. Nobody is giving an alternative for the Corps of Engineers to come in and say, well, you should or shouldn't do that. But we don't have any question if building began, like for condos or shopping, that have to breach this concrete layer, that dig into contaminated space, and
Well,
I don't think it can happen.
You can have a marina if you don't get rid of the dike.
It's pretty big.
Good point. Any questions from Zoom land? We know we have a lot of people there.
Hey, Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, hi, this is Greg Costanza. First, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. 2 points. One is, I believe I know for myself and other members on the field, as well as businesses, there's a lot of long-term leases with the city. So when you're asking what's the reason for all this, I think the underlying reason is obviously money, and that the city is trying to find a way maybe to generate more income and have it be a quote, a better use for the city of Hartford. And I believe that if something were to proceed, that there would be tremendous expense to the town, to the city, because of lawsuits, because individuals would basically be losing their property. So I think that's an important issue. The second point is I appreciate you taking a higher road here, just stating facts. But anyone that's been associated with the airport for the last 15 years, we've heard all of the innuendo and the nefarious rumors that have gone out there. And you're right, it's not my job as a pilot or a business owner in the field or your job. But I would think that, as you mentioned, I would hope that some of the journalistic responsibility would to do some research into it, because the things that we've heard is that there's a lot of back dealings going on, and that there are individuals that would benefit from the closure of the airport. But again, all the innuendo, we don't know. We'd love to get to the bottom of all that, and as you said, have some transparency and get to the facts.
I couldn't appreciate your comments very much, Greg. We didn't mention anything about how much it would cost to close the airport. We have explored that with the CAA, and there are many steps that need to be managed, including buying the land, dealing with the leases. The cost would be high. I can't quote a figure. We did request from the CAA that figure. It runs into the millions. Somebody quoted 59 million, which is probably too high. But whatever it is, there would be lawsuits because owners like myself and hangar owners would need some compensation for closing the airport. Where that burden goes is an important issue if you're planning to close the airport. Who's going to pay for that? How is it going to proceed? Again, there's a lot of darkness here. We just want to raise the facts with the press, and I think they're important facts. And Greg, your point is well taken. Any other questions? That's entirely what our agenda is. We thank you all for being here. We appreciate the opportunity to present our side. There's plenty of literature here to take along with you. If anybody in Zoom land would like the handouts that I'm speaking about, they're certainly available to send out. Just let us know. That 95-page report is extremely informative. It's a few years old, but without any question, all the data there, except for maybe some of the finance, is really relevant. The best use for this 201-acre property, without a question, is to keep the airport just the way it is and not close it and use it for other purposes. That's our position, and we're going to fight to keep it open. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time.